Hello, Bane Farm fans. It is mid-February, a rather sunny day, and we're gonna see the beginnings of greenhouse season. As you can see, we have some plants already started, but let's go see how it actually begins. We start way down here in the basement. We keep the seed starting media down here because it's somewhat damp. We don't want this to get too dry. So take a look at it up close. Hopefully the camera shows off just how fine this is. It would be improper to call it dirt or soil. This is definitely not soil. That's why they call it medium. Usually it is semi-composted wood parts like cellulose. A big contributor usually is coconut hulls. And then the little white parts are perlite. So this is what we use to start seeds in. Comparatively, this is somewhat expensive because, well, it has the biofungicide, which is, well, good for getting, the seeds going. Got to give them a somewhat safe environment. Of course, I guess nothing is ever completely sterile or clean. Oh boy, there's all sorts of stuff on the back of the bag. And let's see. I forgot. There, that's what's in it. Sphagnum peat moss, which in the finer mixes, that is definitely much more common. The lighting in the basement isn't the greatest, and I'm trying to hold the camera steady so we can read that. One thing I gotta realize, that even though I show it real quick, it still takes time for you guys to read it. So we have sphagnum peat moss, perlite is the white stuff, ground limestone, yep, that's for pH. I don't know what the wetting agent is. They don't say that. I think this is the FPX, not the PGX. Maybe it is the PGX because it's the Pro, which I couldn't necessarily tell. Vermiculite. I couldn't tell if there was vermiculite in this. We used to use a straight vermiculite mix. Because vermiculite is, I don't want to say it's like a rock chip, but vermiculite, you can see something in here. This almost like gold flake. That is a big chunk of vermiculite. I do not know exactly. Vermiculite sounds like it's a type of stone, and that's just based on my, as a child, my love for rocks, and how they would name stones in those science stores in the mall. So, enough of the science behind the soil. This is all handwork. The plug trays sit on like a flat filled with a somewhat growing media solution. This is mostly for holding heat. Eventually the roots will grow out the bottom of these, but this is just for holding heat to get the seeds to germinate. And then we don't need this plug tray, but there's a scoop down there. We fill it full of dirt and then take our fingers and press it in. Unfortunately, I missed Dad making all the flaps up this morning. So this is just kind of a demonstration, and it's not actually working, doing anything useful right now. Now there's various size plug trays. I think this is a 288. That's a very common one. There's also 500 plug trays, which are much smaller little cells. And there's also bigger ones. Some of it depends on the type of plant and how long it takes them to reach, I guess, the mature stage for transplanting. Gazania. Now this will be a fun one to see because the seeds are coated and they're bright yellow. Because of scale, we seed by hand. There are ways to seed mechanically that uses a vacuum system and like a large plate with a bunch of pinholes that vacuum the seed. And then once the seeds have filled all of the holes, they release it. I've seen those very often in like tobacco operations. They seed that way because they've got thousands of trays. They'll get started as plugs. They look like little bananas. Not all seed is coated in a coating that's bright yellow or coated at all, like the peppers or those tomatoes.
Peppers.
And peppers are an untreated seed. But some things are dark and blend right in to the soil mixture. Or some seeds are very small. Cabbage is a small one, isn't it?
Smaller, yeah.
Or petunias. Wave petunias are another one. You know, we do have these little seeding devices. They're good for round seeds, but not the bananas that Gazania are. Because of the sunshine, we will always have the buzz of the fan in the background. The majority of our seed comes from Harris Seed. They're based in New York. Which is good because we're south of them, so if things can grow up there, they'll probably survive here. Now, sometimes the seed count and the number of plugs don't always match up, so there's a little bit of room to finish off this tray with some blue salvia. And that's, look at how fun that is. Little brown seeds going into brown dirt. That's why we have the lovely light here to help illuminate the situation. I can't even... Can you guys see those?
No, I'm doing this by the Braille method.
You don't see where you put it. You just...
My hand gets emptied.
Yeah, don't look away, don't sneeze. And is the stick to mark your place?
Yep. And actually, if you were over here, you could see the seed drop. Trade places. You might be able to catch the seed dropping. I'm going to start back here. Can you see it?
No, I can't see it.
I can. Can your camera see it?
Probably not. I'm looking through the camera to make sure I have like things on screen and hopefully in focus. I kind of maybe saw that one drop.
Yeah, well, they get the point that you're just by the Braille method.
Yeah, there's a hand seeder in action. See a little bit of vibration from tapping. I like, one of them has texture to the edge of the lid, and I'll run my fingernail over it just to create the vibration to shake the seed down the funnel. These are peppers being seeded. They take a little longer than tomatoes. Tomato and pepper seeds are about the same size. The peppers are slower growers and a little bit more finicky about environment. Like you have to keep them moist, but not too moist. As you can see, these hot peppers may have some issues with being too wet, kind of based on that scum growing on the surface. And that's what the biofungicide in the starting medium is supposed to protect against. But you want to keep the seeds moist, but not too wet. It's a very fine balance. And we have them sitting on our warming bed. The warming bed has a heating wire exposed there. The sand is kind of deteriorating away over the years or getting lost. But that is plugged into a control box right here, and we can control the temperature underneath the seed, make sure they're nice and warm. And here you can see the plug tray sitting on the flats with the dirt underneath. It's a freshly seeded one. Let's see if we can find some bigger plants. Many of them have been uprooted out of their flat underneath, but here's one Dad just did today, and you can see the roots that were growing into the bottom portion. Now these plants are big enough that they don't need the extra soil underneath to hold the heat. We sit them on this insulation layer over here, just for a little added protection. There are a few tomatoes started to be early. Peppers, all the perennials were started over a month ago. Oh, the dahlias have even already been transplanted up. And then there's a few things we don't start, like New Guinean patience. They are a challenge to get going from seed, and they take a long time to grow up. So Mom buys those at a more commercialized greenhouse. Let's see. We have geraniums going. They're definitely close to the heater here, so they like it warm. And we have asparagus going. Everybody loves asparagus. Always got to grow more asparagus. So like the vegetables, everything else usually grows pretty quick except for the peppers. And the tomatoes we got to try to be early with. Let's step into the redness. That's the grow lights. Give out a red sort of ultraviolet light. Now obviously we don't seed everything at once. Different plants mature at different rates. Like I said, the peppers take longer. So, you know, Saturday afternoons, you know, starting usually about the first of the year, are spent seeding. And we will watch college basketball and seed flats of flowers starting out, and then the vegetables. Now some things are super quick and we'll seed them very, very late. Another fun fact, we'll take another close look at the soil. The sphagnum peat moss, it typically comes out of Canada. There's large peat bogs up there. I thought there'd maybe be more coconut husk in this, but that's probably for the coarser soil, which we will see in a later video when we go out to the greenhouse and start transplanting these up. But the goal is to keep, you know, as many plants in this small greenhouse on the back of the house because it's a smaller area to heat, so less cost. But eventually we will outgrow this in about a week, because we'll have the whole warming bed will be filled up, and the extra racks here are very, very full, and very few plants can take the chill of being away from the heat and underneath the fan. But the fan is supposed to help circulate the heat from the furnace. Here we have rhubarb. Must be very finicky to start from seed because we've never started rhubarb from seed before. And what's even more fun is we've got these big plants here, and then other little sprouts that are ever so tiny still coming up. Typically most plants will germinate relatively evenly. But not rhubarb. And we've never started rhubarb from seed until this year. Let's see, other slow growers. Begonias. Begonias take forever. They're an annual. Like tropical. Many annuals are tropical. A lot of our flowers are not native, at least here in Ohio, or much of the Midwest, other than like the perennials, like Rudbeckia, Columbine. Those are more naturalized to our geography and not brought in from across the world. We're nowhere near dark, but at night we have these lovely covers that we put on. We've been using these for a few years, and they have discolored slightly, and the plastic will get brittle and crack. But these lids cover the tray and essentially make a mini greenhouse to retain the heat overnight. And we even have, I can't find it, but when it's really, really cold, we have an extra frost cloth that will put a blanket to make an extra greenhousey greenhouse over the young seedlings to retain even more heat. We don't want to lose the heat of the warming bed. But on sunny days we have to take these off. We gotta take the covers off, or else they will roast. And I don't know how you can see like the moisture and condensation that's still in here. And these have been off, you know, all afternoon. Now they're stacked up down here, so they can't necessarily vent their moisture that way. You know, everything is about creating the perfect environment for these teeny tiny seeds. You know, there's the parable in the Bible about the mustard seed. I've never tried growing a mustard seed. It is very small, but I don't think they tried to grow bedding plants in biblical times, because these seeds aren't small, but they can be finicky. Like here we've got lavender, and a lot of it's sprouted. I was about to say that one didn't sprout, but actually that's a pepper seed. Now see, we've got those seeds were treated. And most of the seed treatment is for various bacterial and fungal diseases that will plague the plants. And you can see the difference of treated seed versus non-treated, how how it affects germination. That spot gets shaded from this A-frame, I imagine, because those are slower going. They're sprouting, but if we take a moment, we're not going to count, but visually you can see how poor these keystone peppers germinated compared to the early sensation. Now you may wonder, is the seed treatment optional? I mean, seeing the results comparing non-treated to treated, I would definitely go a treated seed if it were available. And I don't know why some varieties are treated versus others. I like Keystone. The full name of Keystone in the seed catalog is Keystone Resistant Giant. So resistant alludes to it's resistant to some disease. I'm not quite sure which ailment of peppers it is resistant to. So maybe they didn't treat the seed because they thought it had strong genetics to fight off disease all by itself. I'm not quite sure about that. So it's not like we have a choice of whether the seed is treated or not. And I know some folks are anti-chemical, but I feel like the return, even if you have to pay more for the seed treatment, the return of having 50% more peppers make it is definitely worth it. Early sensation will make a yellow pepper sometime about late July, August, and it's February, so we still have 5 months from the time these are seeded until we get a pepper. A lot of farming is patience and waiting, and knowing what to do while you're waiting. Like, you know, all the diligence of covering these up every night. Okay, I think I've covered everything about starting seeds. I've yammered on enough. I hopefully have instilled some knowledge. And we will see you guys later with more fun farming adventures.